Hallo, liebe Zuschauer, guten Tag. Today I want to talk about the GCSE German listening exam, and I want to give you some tips to help you do your absolute best in the listening exam. Let's get into it. So, first of all, pre-listening. Obviously, you get your 5 minutes before the listening tracks actually start. What are you going to do in that time to help you prepare so that when you actually start to listen, that you're as ready as you possibly can be? First of all, check, what is the question asking? Especially important is it asking you to answer in English in the first section, section A, or is it asking you to answer in German in section B? Because if you answer in the wrong language, even if you clearly show you've understood what the listening is saying, if you haven't answered it in the right language, you're not going to get the marks. And that can be something as basic as if it's a true false not given and you've answered, say, A for richtig, when it's asking you to say T for true. So even just where it's a letter, writing the incorrect letter because you've used the wrong language, that can cost you a mark. So whatever you need to do when you're flicking through the exam paper at the start, highlight, underline, annotate, just really make sure you're doing exactly what the question is asking you to. So yeah, notes, annotate it. You can write wherever you like around the test paper. Just leave the boxes blank for your answers, of course. Can you predict what you think the answers are going to be before you listen? Do you think the gap is asking you to write a noun, for example, or from any context you get from the question, starting to think about what you might need to answer, that can just help prepare yourself for when you do actually hear the answer, and it will just help you pick out the answer from everything that you're listening to, so kind of honing in on the important information. How many marks are available for each question? Is it 1 mark? Is it 2 marks? That gives you an idea of how much detail you're going to need to put into your answer. Are you just going to need to make 1 point? Because sometimes you might hear 2 or 3 possible reasons, but if it's only 1 mark available, you just need to put one of those reasons that you hear. Then during the listening, what can we actually do while the listening is in progress to maximize your chances? I mean, I'd say, first of all, don't panic. Easy for me to say, but if you start panicking and getting anxious, you're going to lose focus. Just back yourself, be confident in your ability. Listening is really daunting because it's a lot of words that you need to listen to. You might not understand all the words, you might find it's going too quickly, but the good thing with listening is you only need to pick out certain pieces of information. Even if you don't understand 90%, it doesn't matter as long as you've understood where the answer is in the text. That's the main thing. So break the words down. You might hear some long German words. There are a lot of German words, and we're going to look into this in a bit more detail a bit later on. But often they are just several words put together, and they're not as long as you actually think they are. Listen to the whole text, because you might hear the answer at the beginning of the text, you might hear the answer at the end. If you write down the first thing you hear, there might be a reason to make you change your answer a bit later on in the listening text, especially because there are often distractors in the listening. It might say, I used to do this, but now, or it might start talking about, oh, my friend does this, but I do that. So it's not necessarily the first thing you hear that you want to put down. Maybe it is, but there are often distractors in there to try and catch you out, which is why you have to really listen carefully. Listen out for conjunctions, things like but or although, things that might signal a change of direction because they might be trying to lead you in one way when actually the answer is something else. Attention to tenses, especially important if you're having to fill in a table with what did they do in the past, what did they do in the future. So listening out for things like ich werde, I will, or ich habe gemacht, I did. Tenses are going to be crucial. If you put it in the wrong box, you're not going to get the mark. Synonyms and antonyms, you might have one word in the question and the answer might have a synonym for that word, or you might find the answer, so it might say gut and toll. So you're not hearing the exact same word in the text, but a synonym, or you might be hearing the opposite, like gut and schlecht, or gut and nicht schlecht. So there are different ways that they will give you the answer, which might not necessarily be what you're expecting. Process of elimination is a really good technique. Maybe you don't know the answer because you don't recognize what that word is. Maybe you've been looking through the answers, through the questions, and it says the word dangerous, and you can't remember the word dangerous, but maybe the other two options, maybe you know those two words, and if you don't hear those words, you could just put a little cross as you go to say, okay, I haven't heard option A, cross that one off. I haven't heard option B, cross that one off. So therefore, process of elimination, even though I don't know the word for C, I've actually been able to narrow it down so that I've got a pretty good idea that the answer is actually going to be C. Look out for literal words or translations that might lead you to the wrong answer. Again, this is another section that we're going to look at a bit more later on in this video. Try and be specific as you can. It's easy to use vague language. I know when we're speaking to our friends, we often tend to be vague, but with the mark scheme, they always ask for really specific answers. So try and really, it doesn't mean it has to be a long answer, or it doesn't mean it has to be a particularly short answer, but just try to be as accurate as you can with your translations of vocabulary. So let's have a look at some other things that we can, a bit more detail about what we can look out for during the listening. Some key words that we should pay attention to make sure we know the meaning. So there's some different groups of words which are really important to listen out for because they might just change the meaning slightly or send us in a different direction to what we were expecting, or try and catch us out a little bit, or just be asking for some really specific detail that we need to make sure we get in our answer. So qualifiers like ein bisschen, and as we go along during the video, you can just try and say to yourself, okay, what are the translations for these words that I give to you? And then I'll give you the translations at the end. So ein bisschen, a bit, nicht, not, zu, to, as in T-O-O, aber, jedoch, but and however, alle, fast alle, all or almost all, dann, danach, then, after that, manchmal, sometimes, schon, already, noch, so like still, nicht mehr, no more or not anymore. How did you get on with those? These are the translations written there for you. If you need to pause the video to make a note of those, go for it. Time phrases, especially some of the less common ones, normalerweise, gewöhnlich. So as we're going through, you can see if you can translate it before I tell you the answer, and then I'll put the list up again at the end. So like usually, selten looks like the English word seldom. We might say rarely more commonly now. Nun, now, schon, we mentioned that in the past slide already. Seit could mean for or since, referring to a time like for 3 years or since I was 2. Vor, ago, and in German they put the vor before the number of years, like vor 2 Jahren, so literally ago 2 years. Erst, like just or gerade, also meaning just. Gleich, in a minute. Heutzutage, nowadays. Inzwischen, in the meantime. Die Vergangenheit, the past. Die Zukunft, the future. So these are all really useful words that will often come up in the listening. Lots of synonyms here. I haven't really got room on the slide to put the answers up to here, but I'll talk through them, make a note as we go. There are lots and lots of potential synonyms that you could hear. So sehen, schauen, gucken, all meaning to see, to watch. We might know reden, sprechen, to speak. And then as a more informal way to say to speak, we might say to chat. And then in German we've got chatten, plaudern, schwatzen, machen, tun, both meaning to do. I haven't put a third one up there, which is treiben, which also means to do, as in to do sport, like Sport treiben. Schwer, schwierig, difficult, dreckig, schmutzig, dirty. So when you're listening to German, they might pronounce the G at the end as a G, schwierig, but some variations of German, some regional variations might pronounce it more as a Ch, schwierig, schmutzig. They're both correct. It's both a G sound, but you might hear either one of those. Sich gut verstehen, so ich verstehe mich gut mit meiner Schwester, or ich komme gut aus mit meiner Schwester, both meaning to get along with. Witzig, lustig, both meaning funny. Gehen, meaning to walk. Wandern, maybe more to hike. Bummeln, like to walk or to wander around town. Spazieren, to go for a walk. Different ways to say it's tasty or it's delicious. Lecker, es schmeckt, köstlich. Then we've got spannend, aufregend, for exciting. Beeindruckend, eindrucksvoll, impressive. Der Kuchen, die Torte, cake. Die Pension is not a pension, synonym of Gasthaus, guest house. Der Stau, der Verkehr, both meaning traffic. Der Lohn, das Gehalt, salary. Kostenlos, gratis, both meaning for free. Umsonst means for free, but can also mean like you did it for nothing, as in there was no point in doing it. Die Diät, like diet. Die Ernährung is more like your nutrition or how you eat. Das Essen, the food. Schade, traurig, like sad. Vermeiden, verzichten, to avoid doing something. Bedürftig or benachteiligt, similar, like needy or disadvantaged. Leute, Menschen, Personen, so Personen, so people. Recyceln, die Wiederverwertung, so one's a verb, one's a noun, but to recycle. Weil, denn, da, all meaning because. Like in English we can say because, since, as, all synonyms of each other. And in German, same with weil, denn, and da. Den is the only one of those three that doesn't kick the verb to the end of the sentence. Ungefähr, etwa, both meaning like roughly or about. Lustig, amüsant, both funny, amusing. Bestimmt, auf jeden Fall, definitely. Doof, blöd, stupid. Furchtbar, schrecklich, terrible, awful. Einfach, leicht, easy. We've got a few words, all meanings like job or position or work. Der Job, der Beruf, die Arbeit, die Stelle. And we've discussed a lot of synonyms, but it could also be antonyms that are going to give you the answer. Billig and teuer, so cheap and expensive. Prima, schrecklich, great or terrible. Hell, dunkel, light and dark. Langsam, schnell, slow, fast. Dick, schlank, fat and slim. Dumm, klug, dumb, clever. Schön, hässlich, nice or beautiful and ugly. Modern, altmodisch, modern, old-fashioned. Nützlich, nutzlos, so it might be the suffix at the end that kind of gives you a clue. So useful or useless. Nett, gemein, nice, mean. Kaufen, verkaufen might be the prefix that shows you it's an antonym. To buy, to sell. Lachen, weinen might be opposing emotions. To laugh, to cry. Again, here are the translations. Pause, make a note, do what you need to do. Vorsichtig, careful. Other things to pay attention to when you're listening. It might just be an accent, so the umlaut, that's the difference between two words, and it can have a completely different change in meaning. Schon, meaning already. Schön, nice or beautiful. Ausdrucken, to print. Ausdrücken, to express yourself. Hören, to listen. Gehören is not the past, because hören in the past is gehört, but gehören means to belong to. Hilfreich and hilfsbereit, they both mean helpful, but hilfreich, something literally rich in help, is a thing which is helpful, but hilfsbereit, ready to help, that's a person who is helpful. Lachen, laufen, look very similar. Sometimes people get confused between those two. To laugh and to run. Schauspieler, an actor. Schachspieler, a chess player. And then spannend, entspannend, they look very similar, but exciting, and the prefix ent, that means entspannend, means relaxing. And einfach, oh, bit of a issue with my transition there. So einfach, it can mean easy, but it can also mean just or simply. Again, here are the translations. Make a note as you need to. These are all taken from the AQA vocab list, so you can also find it there on their website. Some other things to be careful with. Die See, der See, so it looks like a cognate, but die See is the sea, whereas der See is the lake. Die Lehre is an apprenticeship, whereas der Lehrer, slightly different pronunciation, is the teacher. Die Ferien, and you might even look at these two words, and im Freien, and not realize they're actually different words if you're skimming over it too quickly. But Ferien, holidays, Freien is like in the open air. Das Verkehrsamt, Verkehr looks a bit like, well, Verkehr, we saw that on a previous slide, traffic, but Verkehrsamt is actually Tourist Information Office. Fremdsprachen and Französisch, often confused. Fremdsprachen, foreign language, and Französisch, French. Ausland, abroad. Österreich, Austria. Australien, Australia. Leider, Lieder. When you see them written, you can see the E and the I and the E are the other way around. Leider, unfortunately. Lieder, the second one, songs. Einige, some. Eigene, own, like mein eigenes Zimmer, my own room. Again, translations there for you. And of course, false friends is something that you'll need to watch out for when listening, because you might think that the meaning is the same as the English when you hear a similar word, but actually it has a different meaning. So see if you can get the translation before I put the answer up. Fast, almost. Gift, poison. Gymnasium. So often they have a slightly different pronunciation, even though they're written the same in English and German. Grammar school. Spenden, to donate. Also, so. Chef, Boss. Köstlich. See, you might think it's got something to do with cost, but actually, delicious. Arm, and in fact, it does mean arm, but it has another meaning, which is also poor. So context will help you decide what the correct meaning is. Die Not, so poverty. Die Pension is a guest house. We mentioned that one a bit earlier on. Again, copy down if you need to. Some other words to look out for. Seit, da, morgen, bekommen, werden, neulich, in letzter Zeit, vor kurzem. See if you know any of these before I put the translations up, and we'll just talk about them briefly. Vor as well. So vor meaning ago. It can also mean in front of, like vor dem Bildschirm, in front of the screen. Seit means since, but since as in time, so for or since. Da means since, but in the sense of because. Morgen, so you might have first come across that in when you heard Guten Morgen, good morning, but morgen means tomorrow. Bekommen means to receive, and often people think of that in terms of to become, but werden, whilst it does mean will, it can also mean to become, like to become a doctor, for example. And then we've got 3 different time phrases which also mean recently. You might even see them in writing and speaking as well. Long German words. Don't be daunted if you hear a long German word come up in your listening. Think about it first. Naturwissenschaften, it's a classic. Natur, so it means science, but Natur, nature, and then Wissenschaften is knowledge or knowledges, so like natural knowledge. Der Wohnwagen, again, wohnen, to live, Wagen, another way to say car. So a living car, a caravan, because it's a car you can live in. So a lot of these German words, just not only are they two or more words put together, they often have very literal translations. So just try and think about it logically, what it could be. You have to kind of decipher these words a little bit. Das Zwei-Bett-Zimmer, three words put together, a two-bed room, so like a double room or a twin room. Der Schlafsack, so schlafen, to sleep, Sack, yes, does look like a sack, a sleep sack, better known as a sleeping bag. Or der Schlafanzug, again, sleep, and Anzug is a suit, a sleeping suit, what we would call pajama. So yes, they might sound like long words, but if you just take a moment to think about it logically, you'll find that you're actually able to work out a lot of these words that you might be a bit panicked by when you first hear them. So you can even just, if you hear a word as you're listening, maybe you're not quite sure what it is, but just try and write it down as accurately as you can in the margin, and then you can refer back to it when you're proofreading your answers at the end. Key sounds. You might recognize, or you've probably seen German words more commonly written down, whether writing it in your vocab books, looking at it in your textbook, or reading about it, seeing it on the board. But if you can't recognize what it sounds like, you might not realize that you actually know a word because you only recognize its written form. So things like Menschen, Mädchen, so the SCH makes a sh, but a CH makes a h or a h, depending on the word. Seit, since, S followed by a vowel is a z, but a Z is a ts, seit, Zeit. Zähne, teeth, Szene, scene. Again, that difference in pronunciation. Selten, rarely, selten, to camp. Stadt, town or city, Stadt, instead of. So context, because with that one you can't really hear the difference in pronunciation, but context of the sentence will help you there. Das Rat, so the D at the end is often a very soft sound. Der Rat, like council. Feld, like to fall. Das Feld, the field. Sounds really similar, but context. So sh and h or h. So it's the bit of a harsh sound, that one. But think about what sounds different combinations of letters make, and then just be sure you've got the right word when you've written it down. Festivals. A lot of festivals are on the specification, and some of them we know them, we celebrate them, but they might be referred to as a slightly different word in German. Heiliger Abend, Heilige Drei Könige, der Maitag, Silvester, Pfingsten, St. Nikolaus, Weihnachten, der zweite Weihnachtstag. So some of them we celebrate, some of them you may celebrate. Some of them are specific to Germany, some are specific to Catholicism, but we need to know them because they're in the spec. So Christmas Eve, Heiliger Abend, literally the holy evening. Heilige Drei Könige, that's the three holy kings, the three wise men. So Epiphany, when they followed the star. Der Maitag, May Day, 1st of May, dancing around the maypole and all that. Silvester, New Year's Eve. Pfingsten, celebrated quite a bit in Germany, 50 days after Easter. St. Nikolaus, maybe you know this one. Children put their shoes out on the 6th of December. If they've been good, they get sweets in them, which they discover the next morning. Weihnachten is Christmas, and then der zweite Weihnachtstag, so literally the second day of Christmas, is Boxing Day. Place names. A lot of place names in German sound the same or are spelt the same. London, London, Berlin, Berlin, England, England, or just spelt the same with slightly different pronunciation, but some are just irrecognizable unless you know. Der Ärmelkanal, der Bodensee, Genf, die Donau, Köln, das Mittelmeer, die Mosel, Bayern, München, die Ostsee, Wien, Polen, Sylt. Maybe some of them you know, others you might not have come across. Can you translate any of them before I put the answers up for you? So der Ärmelkanal, the channel, so the English channel, der Bodensee, so that's Lake Constance between Germany and Switzerland on the border. Genf is Geneva, die Donau, the Danube going through Europe, Köln is the city of Cologne, das Mittelmeer, you might be able to work that out, middle and Meer, sea, so the Middle Sea, so the Mediterranean, die Mosel meets the River Rhine, so a very big river called the Moselle. Bayern, if you're a football fan, Bayern München. So Bayern is the county of Bavaria, München, the city of Munich. Die Ostsee, so it is the East Sea, literally, but the Baltic Sea. Wien, Vienna, Polen, so lots of countries end in IEN, Belgian, Australian, and so on, but some of them not quite. And then Sylt, island in North Germany, very popular holiday destination. You might not know what that word is, it's just the name of the island and you can't translate it, but just to know that it's a popular holiday destination in Germany. Singular versus plural could be really important as well, especially as some singular and plural forms are exactly the same. But it's just the article that's going to change. Das Zimmer, one room, die Zimmer, plural for rooms. Der Lehrer, the teacher, die Lehrer, the teachers. So if we're referring to a person or a job, the plural form, the mixed plural form, is the same as the masculine singular. Just like this example as well. Der Schauspieler, the actor, die Schauspieler, the actors. Der Computer, one computer, die Computer, plural computers. What can we do after you've finished listening? So proofread, have a quick flick through your answers, just make sure, does everything make sense? Is it logical? Have you filled in all the gaps? Had a guess, because there's lots of true, false. Write the correct letter. Just have a guess if you're really, really not sure. Answered in the correct language. There's always people that lose marks because they've written in English when they should have been in German. You're just not going to get the mark if you do that. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Any questions? Comment below. Any comments? Any other ideas that I've missed? Any other suggestions? Comment below. We can all help each other out. Good luck in the listening. You're going to do great. Auf Wiedersehen.